All right, class. Welcome to the narrated presentation on the sociology of the family. Here are the categories that we're going to examine with regard to sociology in the family. First, we're going to look at the global view of the family, the marriage in the family, and then the lifestyles with regard to what family, the construct of family, and then divorce. And when we are looking at this right now, for the global view, it's interesting to check out and see where the United States always falls into these categories with regard to selected countries and people that have married, percentage of married people aged 20 to 24. And you can see there's a big divergence between the United States and other countries. And we trail Canada. China's interesting. These are men and women, so you can see that in all countries, more women than men are married in between ages of 20 and 24, which is fascinating to see that age demographic breakdown. That means that women must be married, because there's more women than men, to somebody else besides these women that are aged 20 to 24 must be married to somebody else, men, or someone else that's out of this demographic. So the men are older when they marry. And you can see nationally how fascinating it is and how low the United States is, especially men that are married 20 to 24. Very, very interesting. And it even breaks down into socioeconomic status within these countries as well. I'll let you can look up that on your own. Trends in marriage and divorce in the United States, rates per thousand total population. You can see this trend bloop goes up here, and this is post-World War II. That's why that happened. And then the baby boom went down, goes back up in the 80s, and it's been this is the divorce rate, slowly declining. The divorce rate, the blip here with the marriage rate, is fascinating because when you get more people married, you're going to have more divorces total per thousand. But you can see that the marriage rate is declining as well, and it's interesting to see where they diverge between divorce and marriage. This is an interesting thing. You can click on this on your own, but this is a statistical verification. This source is the CDC and National Survey for Family Growth, 2012 publication. You can see percentage of people married by race and sex: white men, white women, black men, black women, Hispanic, so on and so forth. It's fascinating to see that Hispanic men and women are very close with white men and women, and then the low percentage with African Americans. High school diploma, you can see as you go up higher, the percentages of marriages that happen is lower per how much degrees they have. These demographics are just always so fascinating to me. People that are religious tend to be married more. First marriage survival probability of lasting more than 10 years. You see, you can look at this on your own, but I love these things, and they're real stats too. It's not something that's like secondary. That's primary research. This is the wedding industry expenditures, and you can see how it's climbed just dramatically. Even in 1 year, it's gone up $1,000 to have a wedding. $28,000 is the average national spend on weddings in 2012. It has the breakdown. The venues has a lot to do with it. Everybody wants to get married in a nice place. What is family? With marriage there, but what's family? It's the substantive definition is it's based on blood. And they share genetic heritage. You're joining genetic heritage together, but then there's also a legal definition. So there's two things here. We got the sociological structure of it, which is shared genetic heritage, and then the law, recognition and affirmation of that bond. So there's a distinction between the two, the sociological definition and the legal definition. It helps keep boundaries clear, who's in your family, who's not in your family, enables tracking of who's related to who over time. But then there's this thing called kinship, and kinship's fascinating. It's the state of being related to others within a family structure, usually. Bilateral descent in kinship, and this is quiz stuff here, guys. So bilateral descent, both sides of a person's family are regarded as equally important. That's kind of where we are in the United States. Patrilineal descent is only the father's relatives are important, and then matrilineal descent is only the mother's relatives are significant. And there's nationalistic and ethnic differences in that as well. Got family types. You got extended family, families in which relatives such as grandparents, aunts, and uncles live in the same household. That's an extended family when they live in the same household as them. A nuclear family is a married couple and their unmarried children living together. So that would be children that are probably under age 18. Married couples with children under 18 make up 32% of total families. Um, that means that there's a lot of families that exist out there without children in them. And there's lots of reasons for that, not just not having kids, but other reasons. Percentage of single parent and non-family household has risen steadily over the past 50 years. Big time. It's a huge sociological phenomena. Types of marriages. Let's see if I can go back to this. We have monogamy and serial monogamy. This was going to start off with. The monogamy obviously is the form of marriage in which one woman and one man are married to each other. And serial monogamy is when a person has several spouses in his or her lifetime, but only one spouse at a time. So that's just somebody who just gets remarried. This is marriage laws and informal norms. And let's see if this is still up. Yeah, this is interesting. U.S. marriage laws. Little Amazon ad. Sorry about that. And this is all of our definitions of what we have going on. In the following states, bigamy is a misdemeanor. However, once the penalty is paid, you are back to square one. So you just pay a penalty and you're okay. And bigamy being defined as marrying during the continuance of a lawful marriage. Bigamy is not committed if a prior marriage has been terminated. Is not committed, yeah. So just marrying more than one person, it would be, like without them knowing about it too. And it's not polygamy. Polygamy is when it's happening concurrently. The following states have no statutes against fornication, adultery, or cohabitation. Also, they do not recognize common law marriages. This has changed a little bit, but you can go through all this. It's very, very interesting. I will click out of that right now. It's fascinating to see that stuff. I don't know what we have going. Where is my PowerPoint? Oop, sorry about that. Polygamy is a form of marriage in which an individual may have several husbands and wives simultaneously. Polygyny is a form of polygamy in which a man may have more than one wife at the same time. So it's just kind of a gender distinction between the two, polygyny and polygamy. U.S. households of family type. You can look at this on your own. This is the breakdown over the generations of married couples. You can see in the 1940 and 1960s how much percentage of family types were married couples, and then you start going down, and you can look at all that. It's really, really interesting. Okay, see, here's where we get into. I used Ogburn here instead of Parsons, which is good because Parsons did a lot of functionalist definition of the family. But you can see, as a functionalist definition in sociology, what is it that marriage does? Why do we have it? What's the function of it? What's the purpose of it? Why do we include it in our societal framework? It focuses on what families do for society. In Ogburn, this is what Ogburn said: reproduction, number one for families. This is why we have it. Stable, supportive arena within which to reproduce and develop good functioning members of society. Helps us socialize, it gives us boundaries, and helps us recognize other people's affiliations and identities. Protection for children and women and men in many ways too. Regulate sexual behavior, that's a big one, has societal religious undertones to it, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we have marriage, is to help to regulate sexual behavior for functioning in society. That's debatable whether it functions better or not with these regulations, but that's what we've come to that agreement collectively, that we need that. Affection and companionship too is a big functioning purpose for it. So you can see this is a good way of looking at what a functionalist perspective in sociology is all about. Provision of social status. Married people have different social status than unmarried people. Values, people value in different areas and everything. People value people that are married differently. We can see that happen when people tend to make bonds and social relationships with people that are similar. So married couples are going to hang out with other married couples with kids, they hang out with other married couples with kids. Single people are kind of left out on that, but then single people have their own world. It's kind of an interesting thing that we have there. So in the family, how's it structured for the power? This is a power, this could be conflict here on a broad critical theory perspective. A patriarchy is where the power lays with the men. They are dominant in the decision making. And in the United States, where it's still seen, especially from a feminist perspective, as being very patriarchal with families. But it's debatable. I mean, it depends on where you're at, the location, geography, obviously, and the culture that you're around. The matriarchy society in which women dominate in family decision making. There are areas where certain decision making processes are dominated by women. Southeast Asian has a lot of that. It's fascinating to see where it's a matriarchy. And then egalitarian family, authority pattern in which spouses are regarded as equals. A lot of the Northern European, Scandinavian countries have a lot of that. Here it talks about how the United States has become more egalitarian, or at least that's the goal. There's some debate about that, but anyways, you can look at that all on your own. Over 95% of U.S. men and women will marry at least once in their life. Fascinating stat. Our social position shape the choices when we're making patterns. Talk about courtship here. I'm just going to go through a couple more slides. Historically, it's been not uncommon to be arranged. In the United States, we take this for granted, but we use love as an indicator. This is what we like to talk about as the driving determinant of who we marry is love, but we know it's a little bit more complicated than that as well. And what defines love in terms of identifying people of your same socioeconomic status, cultural capital, social capital, all these kinds of things. In practice, the pool of potential partners is substantially reduced by social location. So, people that are single do better in areas in terms of if they want to get married in certain areas, depending, again, your cultural capital and all that. Endogamy, exogamy, incest taboo, you can read all these on your own. Homogamy, it's a conscious or unconscious tendency to select mate or personal characteristics similar of your own. Do similarities attract, differences attract, these kinds of things. Fascinating to look at. Talk a little bit about DOMA, you can read that on your own. That's the Defense of Marriage Act. Social class differences. Historically, poor and working class families were more authoritarian. So you get these families where you have the poorer you are, the less permissive they are with their children. Rather, research suggests that middle class parents provide more structure through participation in organized activities like sports and things like that, and working class parents allow their children greater freedom if they don't overstep disciplinary bounds. So this is like just structuring, highly socializing your kids so that they behave well, and then this attitude is just giving them guidelines, and it may be because they can't afford that kind of thing, putting them in soccer and other things like that. Black single mothers often belong to stable functioning networks, higher rate of divorce, so then there needs to be more support groups. Native American ethnic and cultural differences have strong ties, family ties go broad, same with Mexican and American. But the interesting thing with family life in Mexican and American is this idea of machismo. It's sense of worth and virility, and a big pride in one's maleness. It's fascinating to see that. It might be religiously based there a little bit. And Mexican Americans are always described as being more familistic, and pride in their extended family, which is interesting. That's a great study, great avenue to do stuff if you're looking for a research paper. I'm going to leave it right here. I just thought I'd narrate some of this, give you an idea of kind of how to look at this PowerPoint, and make sure you do watch the whole PowerPoint and go through it on your own. And I will see you guys later.